we always like to add these history walls in areas where people gather in the Ecolodge. We make these walls so people have a photo shoot for Instagram or whatever it may be. We also do these walls because a lot of people are very intrigued by the meaning of such a wall. They have never seen anything like this before, which makes a huge difference when you have guests and they are enticed by what you have in your lodge. It makes things a lot more interesting for them. And especially children are very intrigued by this artwork on the wall. They don't know how it was made. There's lots of questions when people come to the lodge. What is this? Where did it come from? How did you do it? And makes a good conversation, and it helps break the ice when somebody first comes to our lodge. There's 400 pieces in the collection, and these have to still be painted. There's lots of painting and lots of finishing work to do. The piano keys are missing black. There's lots of detail that we still have to add to this to make it even more interesting. And what we do is we cast it in white plaster, paint it white, wash it with brown. You can see the brown up top that's being washed still. Then we fill in all the little details like the diamonds and spades on the cards, add beads to it, add red colors for texture of textiles, add centerpieces for detail. We have lots of stamps that go on these units as well. We have to stamp them with textual content. And so this is just an intro to our history walls. Yeah, so I want to give a brief explanation on how we make these pieces. We basically are carving each one of these, so don't kid yourself, there's a lot of work to make one of these. Some of these take, 500, 400 hours to carve. So anyways, we glue a piece of soft plaster. We might melt some wax. We might do a couple of things to create the original. So basically, a lot of times I'll draw out the entire text onto this piece, the soft plaster or the wax. And then I come back with dental tools and I'll carve in all the detail. When you carve in all the detail, you have to sort of know in advance what it's going to look like when you paint it. So you have to have a bit of artistic experience, what the texture is going to look like, what the writing is going to look like, just so it looks really beautiful when it gets painted. For example, this piece I used a hacksaw blade to put the texture in both directions. This piece by Beethoven, I carved in the texture of the textile or the paper even, so that it paints really beautifully. So we make this piece. We would have this on a piece of plywood. We would get wet silicone. We would mix part A with part B, cast it over top. We would wait. I usually waited 24 hours, sometimes up to 36 hours. Then you come and take the frame away and you would peel this off. And when you peel it off, you end up getting this detail, this quality of detail. Even the hacksaw blades that I pushed into the soft plaster shows up. Everything shows up. And you have, over time you gain enough experience to figure out exactly what's going to show up when you paint it. And that's how you get to this stage. So what happens is, if you don't paint this white, we spray paint these walls white before we start. Because if you don't, you'll have a little bit of blotchy areas showing up. And we try to avoid that by spraying 2 or 3 coats over top of the piece. It'll actually absorb into the plaster. And then you can start to put your coffee color on top.
And what happens is with the coffee color, it shows off the texture, and then when you fill it with black or paint it with black and you wipe it off with a rag, it becomes legible. You can start reading what the text actually is saying. So that makes a big difference. This RTV silicone is quite expensive. I would say about, I don't know the latest prices, but maybe $700 for a 5-gallon pail. You can make lots of product out of this. I've cast as many as 10,000 pieces using this expensive RTV silicone, and it holds the detail forever. You just got to be, cautious of not using harsh tools to clean the mold when you're going to cast. We always have a big container with soap, and we dip these in before we cast, and then we put it on the table and cast it with plaster. And the soap that's in the mold, we dump it out, but it breaks the surface tension of the plaster, so you get very few air bubbles. So that's another thing you have to learn when you're doing this type of work, is how to cast and get your piece to be very detailed. Now these pieces are, there's 400 of them in the collection, and we sort of put them side by side, sort of that we can have a bit of diversity in the wall, so that people can see all different time periods in history. We love to add architectural pieces, game pieces, cards. That diversity really helps this wall come together and look very attractive.